listen that way.
Well, they're not my headband, but they're my whoopee.
I wore them in NTC and we never saw the sun.
Oh, yeah.
For 4 days we never
Right,
saw the
but
sun.
you're so used to having the gear, one, to protect your eyes from stuff flying.
And it's my whoopee. Tanya, you ready?
And it's the whoopee. Come on.
Good afternoon. My name is Rachel Saylor. I'm from the Department of Art and Art History. It's my pleasure this afternoon to introduce one of the speakers, Dr. Tanya Doucet. She is from Instructional Technologies, the College of Education from UW, and she's going to be speaking about Maker what?
The inflection was perfect there, thank you. That's what I intended. So good afternoon. I always love being placed right after lunch because you're all in a coma, right? So I'll try to be at least a little energetic so that you'll want to listen to what I have to share with you today. So as Rachel said, my name is Tanya and I am in the Instructional Technology program here on campus over in the College of Education. I also have the benefit, the opportunity, the passion of saying that I started the first makerspace on campus, known as Wyoming Makers. This is a facility housed in the College of Education to help pre-service teachers think about this growing movement of informal learning that has fantastically infiltrated formal learning. So we're going to delve into what it is to be a makerspace and kind of talk about what's happening here on campus and across the state. So what is a makerspace? Well, here's what the Department of Education tells us. It's an environment, and my takeaway for you, if you learn nothing else today, it's an environment. It's not what's in the space that matters, it's what you do with the space. So it could also be a facility, but mainly we're trying to provide resources, materials, and equipment so that students can conceive, create, collaborate, which we hope, and as research is showing us, does lead to learning through making. So real quick, I'd like to poll the in-room, and if we have anybody online, Phineas, let me know. Anybody take shop classes when you were in high school? Shop or home economics, sewing? What happened about 15 years ago or so? And we're watching this trend nationwide. Those facilities and labs have gone down for various reasons. But what's happening now is they're making a comeback because in formal education, especially in PK-12 education policy, we woke up and went, oh crap, what did we do? We've taken away some of the skills and activities that aren't quite so tangible, that are harder for us to nail down, that creativity, that collaboration. If anybody pays attention to some of the ed policy or some of the buzzwords, those are part of the Partnership for 21st Century Learning framework. And a lot of our K-12 education has turned more to teach to the test. Standardized testing and how do we get kids to understand blanket concepts, forget the skills that can contribute to them. Makerspaces have popped up in communities as kind of an answer to that problem. So in other words, what are other people saying or how have these manifested? I give you 5 different quotes and bits of literature. So first we have the Wall Street Journal that basically talks about how making taps into that spirit of innovation that we try to pride ourselves on as Americans. Quick test. Who invented the light bulb? Thomas Edison. Of course, now we can have some jokes with Nikola Tesla if we want to talk about energy. There's actually a really fun meme going around right now. If one of the new Tesla auto-driving cars is stolen, does that mean it's now an Edison? Ba-dum-bum. I'm here all day, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so that's what the Wall Street Journal has to say, that we're looking at an economic crisis, that we have falling prices of high-tech tools and materials. I put that quote in here for a reason. When we talk about makerspaces, one of the first things that comes to mind for a number of people typically deals with one piece of equipment. Any guesses? 3D printer. Brandon's the winner. I'll make sure that Dr. Persichiti gives you an A on your next assignment. Yes, it is. So with 3D printers, everybody says, oh, at Makerspace, you have a 3D printer. Well, maybe. What was it I said at the beginning? It's the environment, not what's in it. At the same time, you have to be able to use those tools, and those tools sometimes appear in the environment. But the falling prices, what happened with 3D printing, all of the patents expired, opening them up to the rest of the world. And that's when we saw this massive explosion of 3D printers hitting the market and in our tech news. Trust me on this. Tonight, you're going to be bored. Go to walmart.com, go to their categories, and view all categories. Walmart sells 3D printers. Huffington Post. This quote actually came from Britt Morin. Some of you may have shopped from her company, better known as Britt & Company Jewelry. Her quote basically talks about how being a maker embraces the do-it-yourself, or that mindset of do-it-yourself. Anybody ever take apart your presents on Christmas morning? It's okay to admit it. And then you might try to put it back together, or you might not. Or you just wanted to tinker and play with things and see how it worked. Part of the maker movement is tapping into the intrinsic motivation of why you want to take something apart and figure it out, and pull that into formal learning. The Harvard Ed Review, this is actually a quote from an article by Barbara Halverson, who is one of the other leading researchers on makerspaces, but basically talking about how they started as informal sites, creative production, blending together the digital and the physical, exploring, learning new technical skills. Anybody in the room ever self-identify as not being technologically savvy? A few hands. So I have to take a segue. Your freebie for the day. The mantra that I teach our pre-service teachers. You are as savvy as you need to be. You know what you need to know, when you need to know it, how you need to know it. And when you don't, when you have to learn something new, what do? Anyone? You look it up. You look for tutorials. Maybe you find yourself on lifehacker.com or YouTube, which has become the world's largest search engine that wasn't meant to be a search engine. Makerspaces have done that by bringing together expertise and resources. So basically, it doesn't matter if you're 5 or if you're 50. You want to learn a skill, and a makerspace can help you do that. So community makerspaces popped up worldwide. There are tens and thousands of them, especially if you go to some of the more urban areas. West Coast, Northeast, that's where you'll find community makerspaces where you have staffers on hand, you have volunteers who come in, and you can say, gee, I think I want to learn how to sew. Or, my favorite, I think I want to learn how to be a blacksmith. So makerspaces have brought about a revival of certain forms of education and styles of education to some extent. The Horizon report this last time around actually mentioned makerspaces. And then presidential proclamation. This is actually one of my favorite quotes from this year's proclamation issued by President Obama, that during the National Week of Making, we recommit. Now notice the connection back to the Wall Street Journal, the creative confidence of all Americans. Lesser known, we have now had 2 National Weeks of Making. So if you think this might be a passing fad, well, I guess we can wait until next month and find out with the election. But the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy actually has a senior advisor for making, We actually have regular phone conference meetings and web meetings to talk about what it means to take that informal making and turn it into formal education. So what have we done here at the University of Wyoming in response to this movement? Well, you can see on screen a picture of Wyoming Makers as it exists 2 weeks ago. I mentioned earlier that I have the distinction of creating Wyoming Makers. It's been on campus now for 2 years. We started off in McWhinney Hall in a very small 10 by 10, more or less, room that really didn't let me have enough space to do anything other than stand in it and put up some equipment. Now we're housed in the Education Annex, room 227, and I'm gonna break down this picture on screen for you. So in the upper corner here, you walk in the door, and that brings you along this wall in the second picture, for those of you who are joining us online. We've got chairs and a futon to be comfy and sit and explore. There's a big whiteboard where you can map out projects and draw. 2 3D printers. Yes, my makerspace does have 3D printers because we do some fabrication projects. As you come around the room, you get to our long table that has 2 workstations, a PC and a Mac. They include all kinds of design software. The AutoCAD Inventor Suite, or Autodesk Inventor Suite, excuse me, featuring AutoCAD, Autodesk, all of the other suite tools. Adobe Creative Cloud, Unity, if you wanted to do some app development, Blender, Google SketchUp, 3D modeling, any type of design software, Adobe Premiere, because we also talk about digital making and mobileography. We have green screen kits. So what you can't see in the bookshelves, there's a very dark piece on the bottom shelf. We have 2 green screen kits. We set up one in the space for people who want to use it and film. We can also let you check one out and take it with you. We have a Google site that creates a very short, I think we call it a mini film school, to help faculty and staff on campus think about how they can use that resource in their classrooms. If you want students to create videos, the mini film school can help you with that and take the place of you having to stumble through how do you create videos. I also come in and talk to classes about videos and how to use this equipment. We also have other supplies on our shelves for different projects, tools that are available, hand tools. And then as you continue, so back up to the top picture, you can actually see some little objects sitting on the shelf. Those are sample 3D prints that we use to talk about 3D printing, the materials available, what goes into it. Honestly, most of what I do are demonstrations to help people figure out what are these tools and how can we use them. Another giant whiteboard, we have Science Cat there to remind us that we should laugh. And I can't forget the thinking chair. So in the bottom corner here of this top picture, we have the thinking chair. This chair is original to McWhinney Hall. Anybody in the room know what McWhinney was before it was office buildings? Before that. It was originally the athletic dorm. So some of our colleagues have showers in their offices that don't work, closets. This particular room that we were in actually has a fireplace because it was the common room. We had a faculty member who retired the year that I established Wyoming Makers, and he stopped in to ask me, what is this making thing? Maker what? So I was explaining to him that we wanted to have our pre-service teachers think about how they can incorporate project-based learning using makerspace technologies when they get out into their schools. And he said, I think I have a present for you. I don't know if you'll want it. Okay. So I follow him to his office where he shows me this old leather chair. It has cigarette burns in it. The springs are shot. It needs to be reupholstered. I actually have a dream. I need to find an upholsterer who wants to come in and do an upholstery demonstration, and we use this chair as the example. But draped on the chair, because it is still comfortable to sit in, is a blanket. I made that blanket. One of the things we try to do in the space is showcase things that have been made by the people who staff it or use it for activities. In this case, it's the thinking chair. You can curl up in the thinking chair, put the blanket around you, and start brainstorming. It's magic, right? Well, not entirely. In Wyoming Makers, I spend a lot of time doing demonstrations. We've had CY Middle School from Casper come down. I think we saw 80 students that day, rotated throughout the day. I've had girls from Shoshone. We've had Fremont 38 and the Shoshone tribe came down, and we had some girls in there this summer talking about 3D design and how do you design for 3D environments, and how do you take those designs and either 3D print them or output them to some other material or format. We've had a material science seminar, so 2 weeks ago. Anybody familiar with the material science certificate on campus? Neither was I. I'm loving it. So I looked it up when I was contacted by the YSTEM office to host a demo. This is a wonderfully interdisciplinary certificate where graduate students in physics, chemistry, chemical engineering, mechanical engineering, civil engineering, all of these different disciplines, if you're a master's or a doc student, you can elect to add the certificate onto your graduate degree, looking at specifically materials and manufacturing with those materials for your context and discipline. So we hosted them in the Makerspace 2 weeks ago to talk about what are the different types of 3D printers out there, because my two take ABS and PLA plastics, but we could talk about resins and we could talk about metals, the carbon printers that are out there, and how that fits into their various research areas and the different equipment that they can use for their projects. So that's my space. Typically, I also bring in our pre-service teachers when they're in their methods semester, so the semester before they student teach, and we talk about, you're gonna be a teacher, you're gonna encounter some of this technology in your schools. Oh, by the way, we have this Wyoming Makerspace network for schools. Let me know where you're placed, and I can tell you what equipment you'll have access to. So as they plan their lesson plans, they can go, maybe I do wanna use this equipment. For example, we have a young man in agricultural education this semester who is designing something himself that he can print on the 3D printer and use as realia in his class, an example. In his case, he'll be teaching animal reproduction. Anybody have some ideas what we could do? Hush. It really is that obvious. He's looking at searching thingiverse.com because there are models of anatomical parts that he can download and print for free on our printer. But we're also working together for him to think about, maybe I want students to design some sort of anatomy, and we 3D print it and we critique it for accuracy, which lends itself to a different form of assessment. And we start thinking about different ways of using making in the classroom. But that's just my space. Anybody in the room recognize this guy? I figured Rachel would. This is Brandon Gellis from Art. He has become one of my partners in crime because a year after my makerspace opened, Brandon opened his over in VisArt. And he has some of the equipment that I dream of having. So he has more 3D printers, but he also has laser cutters and lathes and CNC routers, so that students over in art, visual art, can design for different environments and then think about, how do we turn this art into a different medium, which really gets at other forms of education because you're having to think through that whole design process. You can see him with some of his equipment. Brandon actually has student interns who staff his makerspace. I use undergraduate work study students who staff my workerspace. So we're using similar models so that students come into our spaces and say, I have this thing for a class and I think I need to use your equipment, but I have no idea what I'm doing. They can learn from peers and take away some of those barriers that we think about with the hierarchy of a faculty member and a student, which tends to open up what they're willing to do and think about. The other thing I want to mention, anybody been downstairs lately? How many of you took the elevator to come up? How many of you took the stairs? Anybody happen to look between the elevators and stairs? There's this funny thing happening. Some walls have appeared over the last couple of weeks. In the spring, we will be opening the Library Innovation Center. This is an agreement between the libraries and the College of Engineering. So as a result of me being involved in creating my own makerspace and trying to move this forward and commit the University of Wyoming to thinking about how can we move students beyond those, once we get out of the lower level classes, once we get our foundations and our definitions, how do we get them to apply that? The College of Engineering was very gracious and invited me to help them think about what they want to do with the brand new building that's coming. The interim was to create this Library Innovation Center. What you see on screen is actually the quick and dirty floor plan blueprint that I put together. Another freebie for the day, lucidchart.com. You can get a free educator account and unlock all the secrets. It's great for all kinds of diagrams, not just floor plans. You can also use it for concept mapping if you use that in your classes. So with this diagram, we have so much room downstairs. We're so excited. Actually, in the next 2 weeks, we'll be finalizing what equipment will be downstairs, and we'll have project workspace, and we're looking at more than just the 3D printers. We're looking at soldering stations for different projects. We're continuing the idea of digital making and mobilography and video equipment and what that means, but also having storage space. So if students are working on something that's a little bit larger, they don't really want to haul it out of the library and back, they'll be able to store it downstairs where they're working on it. We'll have volunteer students staffing the space, and the College of Engineering is currently investigating funding lines to pay for someone to actually man the space during open hours and coordinate the student volunteers. As I mentioned, this is kind of a precursor. Because coming soon is the new Engineering Education and Research Building. Anybody see this morning's update from the university? If you're curious, Friday morning, 10:30, back over here at 11th and Lewis, there will be the groundbreaking ceremony for this building. I'll be there. I'm kind of excited because I get to be part of this project. What I've given you on screen is actually from the project blueprints. I'm waiting for Dean Pishko to lynch me for this one. But you can see where it says Student Innovation Center in the upper left. A large portion of the second floor of this building will be dedicated to a Student Innovation Center, which will be what I have affectionately begun to call a makerspace on steroids, because it will have every piece of equipment we can dream of. It doesn't matter what you want to make or why you want to make it. If you are a member of this campus community, you will be able to use this facility. So what we've decided to do is partner up. We will each be gateway makerspaces on campus. You can choose as an individual which one you might be comfortable going to, which means we have to have a good digital footprint. We have to have websites and social media that tell you who's in that space, what equipment's in that space, and how you might want to use it. And then you can then decide, well, I really want to focus more on creating videos with my students. I know I've spoken with political science. It's an election year. Wouldn't it be interesting for some of our political science students if they had to create campaign videos or campaign messages? And what are the good digital literacy practices that go into creating such an artifact? Well, the EERB space, the Student Innovation Center, may not be where you want to get started with that project. It may have way more than you need. So then you take a step back and go, well, I could possibly use the library space, but it has a volunteer staffer who doesn't really have expertise in that area. So maybe I want to look at Brandon's Viz Art Lab or Tanya's Wyoming Makers space. And honestly, between the two of us, we could help you get that job done. So it's just up to you which one you decided to contact or come visit. As you're working on projects in one of our spaces, and maybe your project grows, maybe you're a student who's decided to enter the El Bogan Entrepreneurial Contest, the competition that's co-hosted with the College of Business. You have to start off creating a video pitch, but then it grows and you make it to the next round of competition. You get to round 2 and then you get to round 3 and you realize that you need to make something to complement your idea, your concept. Maybe my makerspace doesn't have the tools for you to do that. I helped you with the video pitch. Now it's time for me to help pass you along to the staffers over in the SIC who can help you use the CNC machine to actually take a piece of wood and turn that block of wood into the concept that you had for your project. So now we're talking about a different level of collaboration on campus and a different level of support. So this is where I also want to mention the MakeSchools.org website and the MakeSchools Alliance. MakeSchools Alliance was actually created by scholars at Carnegie Mellon University, working with researchers and faculty at Case Western University. Case Western has one of the most desirable university makerspaces right now. It's massive. Actually, Reed, you've looked at some of the plans.
7 stories high. Yeah, I can't remember the name of the place, but it's a big building that's like 7 stories high, and it's all maker spaces. It's incredible. Yeah.
At Case Western, what they've done with the 7 stories is each floor has a different purpose. So we've done sort of the same thing here at Wyoming, where our different spaces around campus have different purposes. Because we still want to provide support to the community. We want to be able to talk to faculty who say, you know, I have this idea, but I'm not really sure where to go with it. So let me give you an example. I have an email sitting in my inbox right now because I've been dealing with some faculty over in arts and sciences. Requests I never thought I would receive, such as, I need help designing an egg crate for my frog eggs. I like the chuckles because I was like, okay, frog eggs. I'm guessing a regular egg crate's not going to work for this particular task. And this is a researcher starting off with this question. Well, now we're starting to think about maybe we need to get a student involved, and they should be involved with designing what this final product is going to look like, especially if you have a graduate student who's looking at continuing in this line of research. Wouldn't it be useful for them to go through this process of learning 3D design using one of the apps that we recommend, putting together the product, and then we print it and we test it and we see what it looks like and how it works and does it meet the function desirability that you wanted. I actually am also working on another 3D print job for the Wind Center. One of the staffers had an idea, because we were just talking about Pokemon Go in the virtual reality session this morning, to create a collectibles box of objects for visually impaired learners. And the box itself is shaped like a Pokemon Go ball. So then we start thinking about different ways to apply what we're doing. Honestly, I get some interesting requests that I hadn't thought about before. The MakeSchools Alliance was created so that those of us who are in higher ed, who are interested in making, could have a network to rely on, could go look for inspiration from other universities to see what classes are you offering and how are you implementing them. So this semester here at UW, we have initiated iTech 1101, based on the course number. That would be a first-year seminar. It is called Creating in a Modern World. This particular course I love. It's probably one of my favorites to teach now, and here we are in what, week 6 of the semester, week 5? Where are we? What day is it? Week 7? Jeez, time flies when you're having fun. In this case, I took my 23 students and put them into teams. And I'm using this class as research because this is my research agenda. And I did a little bit of a different feature working on putting them into teams. So real quick, how many different ways do we create teams in our classes? What do you people do? Draw lots. Anyone else? Let the computer do it. Random.org. What was that? Proximity. You're at this table, you're a team. K-12 teachers like to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and go around the room until you're in your teams. I'm actually collecting data on a different method for creating teams that gives the learners a voice in their team structure. I call it speed dating for teams. I hear the chuckles. It can actually be mistaken because I did have some students who wrote little hearts on their forms, and I was like, I think you missed the point. I was not intending to help you hook up in class. But what we do is have the students sit along rows, and they have a little sheet, just like they would in a speed dating, if they were to go to a speed dating event. And they have blanks where they can write the name, and they can circle a thumbs up, a thumbs sideways, a thumbs down, or an X. So there's 4 levels of agreement here. Yes, I can totally work with this person. That's a thumbs up. Sideways thumb, I could probably work with them. They're not my top choice, but I could probably work with this person. Thumbs down, I'd really rather not work with this person. X, it's not happening. Based off of our 45-second conversation, no. And I'm drawing upon the business literature and the education literature and the sociology literature. It's really kind of fun playing with this. So we formulated our 6 teams, and we're working through the engineering design process. I'm not an engineer. Disclaimer. Sorry to disappoint anybody who thought I might be. I did try to major in mechanical engineering, and then I met engineering calculus. Unfortunately, I let my fear of math take over. But as a non-engineer, I have a different perspective to lend to the process. And I bring engineers into my class, and I consult with engineers all the time, and they love having that non-engineer's viewpoint of the process. Our 6 teams had started off with I need to define a problem, which means I need to find a problem. Our students have come up with 6 problems they want to tackle. One group would like to look at how do they create, and I'm going to use my own keyboard for an example here. Anyone ever had a silicone overlay on your keyboard? They sell them in the Union. I see some hands. I love it to keep the fur out of my keyboard because I have 3 giant dogs. But they got the idea looking at this little piece of silicone and said, wouldn't it be cool if the letters could change based off of the language that I've selected? I see some light bulbs going off. Oh, wait. How many of you speak multiple languages? How many of you write in multiple languages? That's always a trickier question. Would it be beneficial if you could switch your keyboard that easily? Because you can change the input on your computer, but your keys don't change. They're static. What if you were a language learner? That could help you with how you're typing and learning to write in that language too. So they are now working with Dr. Frick, the department head in mechanical engineering, to see how they can solve this problem with a product. I have another group. This one's always a fun one. Anybody ever try to shovel your walkway and the snow gets stuck to your shovel? And you bang it against the ground or the tree that's next to you or whatever's nearby to try to get the snow off so you can keep shoveling. Well, they've decided that maybe we could create some sort of heated base that you could set your shovel in that would heat the metal shovel and keep it from sticking. Maybe, maybe not. But they have to work through the problem in the product design to see what that prototype would look like and how it would function. I have another group who has at least 2 members who grew up on farms and ranches having to move bales of hay. If you've ever had to move bales of hay, they often fall apart because the twine doesn't necessarily stay connected. Or, despite having on the thickest gloves you can find, you're still going to hurt your hand when you grab that string or that wire. So they want to design a tool that would help cinch it and let you lift it without cutting into your hand. And they're taking it a step further. What if you have a shoulder injury and you can only use one arm? Or what if you're an amputee and you can only use one arm? They already have meetings set up with an orthopedic surgeon down in Fort Collins to help them with this design. I have another team who is working on solving that terribly frustrating issue of your charger cable and it bending and fraying, and then you have to go buy another one, and you just bought this one and dropped $20 on it because that was the only one you could find. But what if you could have some sort of sleeve or clip that could help prevent that problem? They've been reaching out to Apple and Samsung to talk to product designers and see how they might be able to solve that problem. My group of enterprising young men have decided to tackle a very odd problem that they identified. It's the middle of the night and you've really got to go to the restroom, but you don't want to turn on the light because it's going to blind you, but you really don't want to make a mess and miss the toilet. A lighted toilet seat. We laugh, But I've actually brought this idea up to a few different people now, and my favorite that came up was, I'm trying to potty train my son, and if you had some type of lighted toilet seat, this could help me. So what started as a very silly problem has actually turned into an interesting challenge. And there are different products on the market. Some of them are very silly, but they're trying to take a different approach. And then my last group, they picked a problem near and dear to my own heart. How many of you have a fob for your vehicle? Anybody ever accidentally hit the buttons because of the way you were holding it? Next thing you know, the alarm's going off or you've unlocked the car. In my case, it's funny, Subaru discontinued this model after only 1 year. Because when you're holding your keys together, it will press both buttons simultaneously. And if you do that for more than 3 seconds and you're standing within the right distance of the vehicle, it disarms your car. Oops. And I've figured out I had to Google it, and we talked about how did I get to the bottom of my problem. I got in my car and noticed that the red light on the dash was flashing rapidly. Well, that's weird. It doesn't normally do that. So I got onto Google, 2005 Subaru Forester security light rapid flash. And I found some Subaru forum where somebody had this problem, and somebody else said, oh, you've put your car into valet mode. It's now disarmed. Here's how you fix that. And now I have those instructions memorized by heart. Open up both doors in the front, press and hold the buttons, and reset it. Wouldn't it be nice if I didn't have to do that, though? What if I had a cover that I could put onto my fob that would keep me from doing that? I love our students. They took the idea a step further. They want to create a cover on the back side that will also have a pepper spray container. So if you are a student, or if you're just someone who is concerned with personal safety, perhaps you live in a larger area where you do carry pepper spray on a regular basis, you end up with these bulky keys that you really can't put in your pockets. They take up so much space in your bag. But what if we could combine 2 products into one? And they took it another step further to talk about sustainability. They don't want to be in the market of producing pepper spray and selling these products. So what if we just sold an empty canister with our covers and included a recipe card to make your own pepper spray at home and refill it yourself? And a pepper spray that wouldn't necessarily have a detrimental effect on a particular species in our environment. They're now working with a faculty member in the chemistry department on pepper spray formulations. These are the kinds of projects that can come out of classes. I have the benefit of working in an interdisciplinary class, so I can encourage this broad application from across different subject areas. But my hope is that you're listening to these examples thinking, oh, well, that kind of applies to my subject area. Maybe we could do something and have students make something around that. That would be interesting. Or here's a fun one. I mentioned the frog egg container. We're going to have to work on this project a little bit more than that faculty member initially realized, because last spring, an article came out where a researcher accidentally had fish embryos near a 3D printer. And within a few days, the embryos began to mutate and eventually died. As researchers, they went, something's happening here. We should do a study and investigate this. Came back to the materials that were being used in that 3D printer and the impact they had on the live embryos. So with this faculty member who wants to do the frog egg container, we need to look and see, my printers are PLA and ABS. Will that work for you? Or do we need to look at a different extruder and a different material to create this product that you need? And start having even more interdisciplinary conversations than we could have imagined when that was just oh, I need this thing. So the MakeSchools Alliance has been a great foundation for me. I can go look and say, who else is doing work in this area? Or I can tell a faculty member or a staff member or a student, I know somebody at this other university who's doing work in that area. Let me connect you with them. And then earlier I mentioned this Wyoming School-Based Maker Network. Part of my purpose with this makerspace was to help our pre-service teachers, was to help them think about what they're going to do with these technologies when they become teachers. Well, if I don't serve them after they graduate, what good have I done? I planted the seed, but I'm not there to help foster it and see it through. And to me, that's only half the job. So I also set out to create a school-based maker network where we could connect our K-12 schools together. Who's doing what and where? This is a quick and dirty screenshot from the network. And when I say network, I mean I created a Google form where they could submit details. I used some of the Google Apps add-ons to turn those submissions into formatted documents. And then if you go to this link, which by the way, if you are in the evolution schedule on sched.org, and you go into this session, at the bottom it says PDF, you get this PDF, those links are active, you don't have to write down the link. You can click on it in the PDF. But if you click this link, it opens up in Google Drive and it looks just like this. And you can see that we have Sublette 1, Teton 1, Park 1, Park 6, Fremont 1, 2 facilities in Fremont 25, 1 in Fremont 24. It's growing. The schools are catching on and they're putting these facilities in. Communities are catching on. I know of at least 3 community-based makerspaces in Wyoming as of last week. It's a growing movement. And my argument is, as our students in the state experience these activities and they come to us, they're going to expect it here. What happens if they don't get it? They'll go elsewhere. So we have to pay attention to where we've been and where we're going at the same time. And hopefully these kinds of networks can help us with that. So with that, my tagline is, let's make something. Doesn't matter what it is. Maybe you want a blanket. I've actually worked with Family and Consumer Science, Dr. Erin Eyrich. We're looking at if we can get the equipment. We'll be doing sewing seminars so that anyone of any age can learn how to sew. If you have paid attention to the UW Foundation and some of their changes lately, anybody heard of UFund? It's a brand new, I see some nodding, a lot of head shaking. It's a brand new funding model on campus that the foundation is supporting. It's akin to Kickstarter, Indiegogo, or if you're in the K-12 realm, Donors Choose, where you create a campaign to get funding to buy equipment for a project. In this case, I'm working with my work study students now actually to create the videos that we need to get $2,500 plus the fee that we have to pay for the service, so a total of $2,750 to get sewing machines, to get soldering stations, and to get supplies to use all of this equipment for different activities. One of the activities that we're working on setting up, at this point it's likely going to be into the spring, I have a young man who DJs to help pay his tuition. And when I say DJ, I mean not just weddings and proms, he also does raves, which means he does mixing the music together and he does light shows. So we're going to host a mini rave. And we're going to invite some electrical engineering faculty to come talk about the science of the sound, and we're going to talk some performing arts faculty to come talk about the lighting and the importance of lighting. And he's going to be there to show people how he puts it together and let people take turns and learn how to mix music digitally. In the spring, we're going to be teaching an elective course through the lab school on campus. We did this 2 years ago, and it was a huge success. The lab school girls, if I get some guys, I'll be super excited. Typically when you talk fashion design, the guys run. In this case, the lab school students will design patterns, such as what's on my sweater. It's a very Southwestern pattern. They would design a pattern that could be printed onto a fabric. We have a fabric printer on campus. It's really cool. We've done some cool stuff with that in Dr. Eyrich's lab. And I saw Donna in here earlier. I think she was one of the ones who first brought that technology to campus. We then work with undergraduate students who take those fabrics and turn them into garments for themselves and their peer designer in the lab school. And they're featured in the end of the year fashion show. So there's a different way to think about making. And I have given you all of a whole 2 minutes for questions, and I'm so sorry for that. But it's like drinking from a fire hose. 15 minutes? I thought we went till 45. Okay. So a couple of minutes for some questions. Activities, facilities on campus, what's happening, what's coming, what's going on in the state?
You mentioned that there are some community makerspaces as well. Is the Laramie Makerspace still up and going, and how are you working with them?
That is a wonderful and sad question. It is not. I have been working with Bridget Hardy, who was part of the Laramie Makerspace. Bridget was actually in that first project we did with the lab school 2 years ago. I was very sad to hear that the Makerspace was not going to stay, but what they ran into was a liability issue primarily. How do you pay for insurance to cover the types of activities you want to do? Because they were a volunteer group and they were running out of the Albany County Public Library. I have the benefit of being under the university's insurance policy, and we have a minors on campus policy as well through legal that helps protect us through these things. So that said, I do still work with Bridget from time to time, and I've been trying to reach out more and more, and I'd love to get some of our community members who want to come in and host different activities. That's a great question, thank you. Others?
Do you have data on how many students use the makerspaces that are currently up and running on campus?
We have not notes jotted down, and we've been, because we do track who comes in and when. In 2 years, Wyoming Makers has seen, I have to do the math really quick, 230 students or so in 2 years have come through the makerspace. I wish I could speak to Brandon's, but I'm sure he does have some data as well. And I know that we're looking at how do we track usage over time, especially with the library space opening this spring.
Just to piggyback off that, I'm a school board member in the state, and anytime we start something new, we want to see if it is having an impact on learning. So do you have any plans for assessment, or if this is actually improving learning here on campus?
I have no numbers for what's happening on campus. I can point to studies where we have looked at what's happening. Yasmin, I'm going to say her wrong incorrectly, Kafi, and Kylie Pepper at Indiana have some assessment data. I currently have a proposal into the NSF Foundation, actually, to look at learning achievement and how do we assess creativity in the classroom and hold it as an equal skill. So thank you for that. And my time is up, so thank you for letting me have 45 minutes of your afternoon.